Hey everybody, my name is Mike Meth, and this is my first webisode, episode, tutorial, whatever this is the first one of that, the first thing that I'm doing. I'm going to talk a little bit in this video about what my process is for my painting that I just uploaded, my painting of Connor Kenway from Assassin's Creed 3. The point of this whole thing is to kind of give you a look into my workflow, talk a little bit about the way I do things, but also in the future, because I want to do more of these. I want to get some feedback from you guys and field some questions on, be it about the type of software that I use or the workflow, whatever. If you have questions, the idea is you ask me, and in the next update, I will do whatever I can do to field those questions. What else? All right, that's a bit. That's enough about me. Let's move on to the art stuff. So now we are going to open up Photoshop. Do that. All right. Let's open up the painting. So here, as you can see, this is my finished painting of Connor from Assassin's Creed 3. Let's see. Kind of figuring out how I'm doing these types of videos as I go, so please be patient. What I have done is I've kind of broke it down into chunks, kind of like how you would have with a cooking show, I guess, where instead of me doing the entire thing as I go along, instead of like a sped up speed painting or something like that, which is great, and I enjoy those videos. The idea is to give you, I guess, more manageable chunks in real time that I can talk while I'm doing it, and that way, since I'm not, completely occupied with painting as I go along, I can really give some super valuable insight and make jokes or whatever it is that I do. I don't know. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this painting here. How do I start my paintings? I think I'm going to open up another canvas just so I can sort of demonstrate as I talk here. Just bear with me. Open up. That way I can kind of freestyle as I go along. Okay, new canvas. So, first of all, I'll talk a little bit about my setup. I'm just going to assume that most of you have no idea how, I guess, I do the things I do. I use a tablet and I use a computer and a stylus, but I'm going to speak to you as if you're completely oblivious to any of that stuff. In which case, congratulations on finding this video on YouTube. And, okay, let's do some art stuff. So, I'm just going to illustrate my, my setup here. So, bear with me. Use your imagination if you can. So here's my desk. Blam! And, I've got two monitors. Here is monitor number 1. Sorta. Sure, that's monitor. And here is monitor number 2. And apparently this one on the right is slightly bigger. Not really in real life. Anyway. Okay. So these are the two monitors. Sweet. And here, I've got my keyboard, because when I'm using Photoshop is the software that I use. As you can probably see, I'm gesturing with my hands right now, and I'm realizing that you can't see that, but whatever. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm a gestural and expressive person, and I'm not going to change that for anybody. So here's my keyboard. Here are keys. And this plugs in to have a little hole in the desk. Anyway, so here's the tablet over here, and this is kind of the, this is the thing. This is the important thing that I use to create the artwork. So it's about this big, and that doesn't really mean anything. Maybe it's like 8 by 12 inches, something like that. And it is pressure sensitive. Also hooks up to the computers. Comes with a stylus. This, let's pretend, is the stylus. It's awful. Whatever. Okay, so you can use the stylus on this touch sensitive pad, or you can use, I also have a mouse. Here's the mouse. Why not? Wireless mouse. So, basically, and I'm really sorry for those of you who are super comfortable with tablets, and I'm probably boring you to tears, but too bad. Deal with it! I'll be done with this part soon. We can get on to the cool stuff. Okay, so use this stylus here to draw on the tablet, and when you draw on there, it shows up on the monitor. Now, I have two monitors, and some of you might be asking, why on earth does this devilishly handsome man have two monitors when he could be using one? And let me answer your question. I have two because on this one, this is the right monitor. I use this one for art stuff. So when I'm doing a painting, Photoshop itself, as you can see, it has all these different windows and things, and it actually has more. But anyway, so it can get cluttered really easily, so I make sure that I devote this one just to art and, you know, my actual canvas for when I'm painting. And the other one I like to use for reference. So as you can see, I tend to go for kind of like a photorealistic style. Or realistic. I don't want to say photorealistic because then everyone goes nuts and says, oh, it's not really photorealistic. So let's say realistic. Creative realism is my style. So I like to use a lot of reference. Let's go ahead and pull up reference. Oh, that is not the reference I use for this. Where's reference? Okay, so let's move that for a second. Hang on. Okay, so this is my reference that I used for the Connor painting. I'll just do side by side. I'm only recording one of the monitors here. So here on the right is the finished painting. Here's the reference I used. I'm going to go into it a little more depth in a minute here. So back to what I was talking about. I have this right monitor, which is the one that this video is being recorded on, to just have my canvas for painting. And this one on the left monitor that you can't see, I have another Photoshop window open usually with my reference, and I keep it only for reference, and that way it's easy to keep everything, you know, separate and organized, and, you know, the window doesn't become cluttered. Anyway, so enough about this nonsense here. I probably did a horrible job explaining how exactly it works to use a Wacom. Oh, it's a Wacom tablet. That's the brand that makes this tablet here. Wacom tablet. And it's called a Wacom. The model name is, wish I could write, Intuos 4. I think they're up to Intuos 5 or 6 now, but this is the one that I use. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's go into the specifics of the painting, which at this point it's almost like 10 minutes. So if you've stayed with me this long, I appreciate it. It's probably been horribly painful. So let's get to the cool stuff. Let's move this one out of the way. And here, once again, is Connor from Assassin's Creed 3. Okay, so basically the way I do my work is I start with, you know, a quick sketch to get the composition and the proportions. A lot of people like to do, you know, really tight line work, just, you know, outlines to plot out the thing. I kind of do it really loose because I like to get into the the gray tones and the rendering as soon as possible. So basically, here is one of the stages. This is kind of my first sketch of what I did. You know, I did my basic sketch of the pose. And how did I get that pose? Well, glad you asked. I actually found a painting that some guy I follow on DeviantArt did. Let's zoom in, give him a shameless plug here. I think his name is Chaotic Knight. Chaotic, K-N-I-G-H-T. And Chaotic Knight, you're welcome for the shameless plug that all of 5 people have just heard and or seen on this video. Anyway, so this is a self-portrait that he did, and I saw it and I liked the lighting that he was using, and I kind of liked the angle that he had it at, so I wanted to do something like that with Connor. So, if I can move this out of the way. So here's my first sketch of Connor. It's in grayscale. I should mention that I tend to paint things in grayscale first, just because the values. And when I say value, that means the differentiation between lights and darks. You know, everything in real life in the natural world has a range of values. Tones, well, I guess that could be used the same way. Values is just light and dark. And when you get into colors, that's a whole other world of complexity. So when people ask me, and the way that I learned it, it's really best to learn how to nail down these values first. You know, the difference in light and dark before you start even worrying about color. So here's the initial sketch that I did. Sorry to belabor the point. I'm gonna get better at rationing my time, and the more I do. So this is kind of the learning on the job type thing. So here's the first one in grayscale, and once I get that down, I have the basic pose, I have the composition, the general lights and darks that I want. Again, I'm moving my hands to show this, and you can't see that. I can't help myself. So once I do that, I move on to this next step here, where I start blocking in some colors. And I'm also using this reference that is on the monitor that you can't see. Let's move that into the picture. I got a bunch of pictures, screenshots from Assassin's Creed 3 to try and get the likeness down for Connor. And this painting in particular is tough. Usually when I do portrait work, I'm working from a real live person, a real live model. And that's not to say that this character model of Connor isn't realistic. It's just that it's not a real life person. So, you know, only a real life photograph of a person has the types of nuances and things that it takes to get, you know, a photorealistic look in a painting that you're doing. Anyway, so here's my assortment of Connor faces that I used, and also some clothing to get the idea for the outfit. And I used that. Oh no! Get out of the way. To get to this point. And so now I have the basic idea for the outfit. These are gonna be buttons at some point. I have warm light and cool reflected light. And when I say warm and cool, I'm talking about color. And warm light, excuse me, tends to be reds and oranges and yellows, whereas cool light means the opposite of that. And the other opposite end of the color wheel is blues and purples and some greens. And there can be a little overlap, but those are the major rules. So, in this piece, the primary light that is illuminating our dear friend Connor here is coming from... I'm going to illustrate as I go here. Let's sample this color. Warm light, coming this way. So that's coming from the top left, kind of in front of him, and that's what's lighting this side of his face here. And it's also kind of lighting this part of his jacket and this part of his undershirt or whatever. And then what's left is a cool reflected light or shadow. It's mostly shadow. It's darker than the light, obviously. An important thing to know when you're talking about color theory, and It's one thing to work straight from a photograph and copy those colors, but it really helps to have a good understanding of general color theory and lighting theory, so that way you can add more to a piece than the photo reference offers. I kind of like to think of it as making something look maybe more real or more interesting, more visually interesting than the actual reference. I do that with structure too. When I say, so here's the finished piece. Some people in the comments when I posted this said that he kind of looks a little bit caricaturized, and the reason for that is I kind of feel like I tend to exaggerate, especially with facial features. I tend to exaggerate a little bit, just so it's almost as if it makes that person look more like them than they do in real life. Sometimes if you have a picture taken of you and you look at it and it's a weird pose or whatever the circumstance, you'll say, oh, that doesn't look like me. And to avoid that, I try and really bring out the features that make each person them. So, for example, the robust lips, and he's got this little pouty thing going on here, and he's got the flaring nostrils, and just sort of exaggerated bone structure. And especially in this neck, that's a huge Mike Tyson looking neck. And the character itself of Connor, he's supposed to be, this almost animalistic, dominant force. So I'm trying to pull some of that out and exaggerate things that would fall in line with that characterization of Connor. Okay, so let's go back here because I skipped some steps. So this is where we left off. So I've got the warm light coming here. So color theory is what I was talking about before I jumped off on a tangent. So when you have a warm light like this here, on general principle, the shadows that warm light casts will be of a cool color. And the reason for that is this shadow on this side, it's being filled by another light. If it was, if there was no reflected light in the natural world, you would have this light here, and then this side of his face that wasn't in the light would just be pitch black, which is obviously not the way things are. So this is all reflected light, and the reason this is a cool bluish color is because it's reflecting some of the color of the sky, which is blue. So that's just a general idea. And the opposite of that is true when you have a cool light. Let's say that the primary light was a blue or something like that. It tends to fill with the opposite. The shadows would be of a warmer color. And also, an interesting thing to note, I've known that stuff for a while. A lot of you might know that already. Let's go to here. Down-facing shadows, and what I mean by that is, you have the primary light coming from this way, and then reflected cool light over here. But for example, the bottom of this guy's nose and under his chin, that's also shadow, but you might notice it's not really the same cool color as this part of him. The reason that is, down-facing planes, so like the bottom of the nose, bottom of the chin, tend to be warm colors because that's reflecting the light off of the ground, which is either, a muddy or a warm grass color. So that's all, there's reflected light from everywhere and it all plays into the equation. So, to simplify, go back here. So warm light over here, warm light over here. I'm going to write this down. Warm light equals cool shadows, and vice versa. I don't really feel like writing it again. And down-facing planes, like here and here, are usually warm shadows. Okay, so now that we've got this, I start bringing in some background elements. I want to, bring the whole theme together. So what I did, a little backstory on this character, for those of you who haven't played the game or don't know anything about it. This character of Connor is an assassin from Revolutionary War times, which explains the title of the piece. I called it 1776 because I'm super clever. And anyway, so what I wanted to do is, we'll look forward to the final image again, is I wanted to tie some of those themes in. And he's got his colonial, or rather Revolutionary War outfit here. He's got a colonial flag back here, which was hard to find reference for, surprisingly. I just want to create a cohesive whole image that ties in all the different elements of the character and the world that that character lives in. So, go back to where we left off. So this is the last step that we left off at, and then I start coming to here, and I've got a bald guy. So what I did for that, I went back to my photo reference. You can see that the face changed a lot, and I tried to. What is this guy's name here? His name is Adam Beach. I think he's a Native American actor, and I try and find real life examples of people who I feel could play a character in if that character would live in real life. So I kind of used him for some inspiration. And here's Mike Tyson, because he kind of has that bulky, kind of looks strong like an ox. So I had some of that. And so here are the pictures of Connor. I went back and I reworked the likeness of Connor. And see, I have the flag in the background. So I found reference of a flag. So here's the reference I used for the flag, which here, this is where it is at this point. God, this video is going really long. I'm going to have to become more efficient here. So, yeah, I pulled reference from that flag, put that in the background, still gesturing with my hands, which no one can see. God, I'm awful at this. But obviously, the main difference between this flag and the one I'm using in the final result is, that's not it, the 13 stars of the colonial flag. So, I mean, I pulled together a lot of photo reference, but at least when I do it, I'm always taking certain liberties. Even if I'm working from a bunch of photos, or even if I'm working from one photo for the most part, I always want to create something original, because otherwise, why not just leave it as a photograph? So, back to our last step. Here's where we left off. I went in and I started to refine the lighting on his face. Start to unify the color scheme, because I realized I'm kind of judging the lighting off of this reference picture I had over here, this guy here, and I'm also I've got a picture of a flag that I'm working with, so I need all these different things that I'm putting into the scene that don't actually exist in the same world in real life. I have to make them look like they exist in the same world, in the same scene. So I start to see, there's a lot more blues, and the oranges and the warm colors on the left side of his face here, they aren't really as vibrant. So I start to play on that a little bit more, tie it together. So you can see I started doing some more details in the face, and start doing some stuff with the buttons, and this was this step. Then we move on. Here's the next step. Okay, so here I started really playing with the colors a bit more, making these oranges, making these oranges and reds more orangey and reddy, and making the cools a little more colorful. My computer's starting to chop because I got a whole bunch of stuff going at once. It's not happy. And for example, the blues. This is, if it were in real life, this outfit that he's wearing, this is blue. Just like this flag here. I mean, you've probably all have seen an American flag, and or at least you think that the top left of the flag is blue, and the stripes are red, and these stripes are white. But what is easy to overlook, and this is a little bit deep, so prepare to have your mind blown here, is that color, as it exists in the real world, only exists in relation to other colors. So blue, what we think of as blue, only is blue because of the other colors around it that are different from that blue. So everything is relative. So this here, if you look at it, if we zoom in, and if I'm going to sample this color, you can see this is what color it actually is. That's a reddish color. But we kind of, our minds tied together as being blue because that's what we know. The reason it looks like this is because it's being hit by the same light that is lighting his side of the face, which is a warm light. So this blue is going to really have a lot of red and orange in it. Just like this red, if you look at it and you think it's red, but it's really kind of a vibrant reddish orange. And this white, I'll go ahead and say that there's no white. Here's the final version. There's no white in this entire painting. So you might be saying, oh, that's not true. Look at the white over here. So if we go and highlight this, what looks like white is actually a different shade of a yellowish orange because it's also being hit by that warm light that lights its side of the face. And the opposite is true. The parts of the flag that are in shadow from that light, so like I mentioned before, are cool in color. This part of the white stripe of the flag is actually kind of like a purplish, bluish type of thing. And there's some purple in the reds. And sorry for these scan lines. That's bothering me a lot. Color is relative. That's what I was trying to say. And that's really the hardest part to get. That's what took me probably the longest time is to get, because let's say I want to draw or paint a picture of a Native American guy with a flag in the background. Your instinct tells you, okay, his skin tone is going to be orange, the flag is going to be blue, and this part of the flag is going to be red, white, and blue. And so what that looks like, if I get this thing back here, my working video canvas, just realized I haven't really done any painting. So let's do some. Let's do some painting. Just so you know I know what I'm doing, kind of. Why did that happen? Okay, so, like I was saying, if, you're working from your head and you think, oh, I'm going to draw a Native American guy, and he's going to be in a background with an American flag. I'm just going to leave this loose, because otherwise I'll spend a lot of time. There's his massive neck. Whatever. Wow. We got the flag thing going on back here. So your natural reaction is to say, okay, well, I know that Native Americans are orangish in skin tone. So you make it that color. I know this is awful, but just bear with me here. Okay. I know that to be true. And I also know that the American flag is red, white, and blue. So here's blue for the top left corner. And these stripes are red, white, and blue. So red, white, and blue, and blah, 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 blah. Obviously, you have to use your imagination here, excuse me, because there's a really big difference between whether this was a finished result and how, I ended up leaving it. But the point I'm trying to drive home is if you complete an entire painting with this in mind, everything would look really disjointed. I mean, it might look cool or realistic maybe even, but none of these things would look like they existed in the same world. So what you need to do is take into account color temperature. So the light, for example, my warm lights and my cools, and take into account the lighting scheme that applies to everything. So this sketch that I was showing, instead, this is going to be, when you get into the highlights, why don't I'm going to work off of the older thing, so I have something that actually looks presentable. So here, This is before I did some more work. So I'm going to, you know, make some hot highlights that work considering the, you know, the light that's hitting it. And the cool spots over here, you know, I'm going to, it's not just going to be a generic flesh tone, whatever that actually means. There's going to be some cools in here. Oh, that doesn't look good. And that applies to everything. So for example, even on here, the next step is to take some of those warm colors and apply them to the whites. And whatever is being hit by the light, even the blues, that's going to have some warmth to it. Whereas everything that's being left in the shadow from that warm light is going to have some cool colors in. You get the idea. Okay. Yeah, so blues over here in the flag. Some warm colors. On this part of the flag. Bleh! Whatever. Okay. So go away. Go away! There. So you can see the lead between this step here and this step here. As I mentioned before, I'm really starting to play up on the lights. I'm kind of blowing out the highlights, getting more warmth in there, more cools over here. Same thing with the flag. And the final step over here, that's a big difference. So what I do here, this is the final phase where we're really hammering in the details. You know, going in and putting the little cracks and creases in the... What is going on here? Blech. Okay, going in and doing, you know, these creases in the lips. Cool stuff like that. Or, for example, eyes. I should talk a little bit about eyes. If you're doing any picture of a person or trying to hammer any type of likeness of a person, the absolute most important part that will make or break any drawing or painting is the eyes. The rest of the face could be awesome. If the eyes are off even a little bit, the whole thing will look like crap. And how do I prove that point? I'm going to use my... Oh, what did I do? Press the wrong button. Stop it! It's loading, and it's ruining everything. Stop! Okay, so let's use the one I actually used. I'm really sorry. I kind of did the worst possible thing. I skimped over the basics of Photoshop, and I'm skimping over the detailed parts of what I'm doing. So you're really not getting a good understanding of anything. So you're welcome for that. It'll be better in the next coming videos. This is why I need questions from actual people, so I have some kind of direction for when I'm doing this type of thing. Okay, so point I was trying to make. If this eye is wonky, now that whole thing looks weird. At least it looks weird to me. So going back and I'm talking about the details that I'm doing. Blam. Okay, so for example, you know, I want to add some character. I didn't really have reference for, you know, the eyes or the facial features besides those screenshots I showed you guys before, and I'm not really, you know, using anything to a T. You know, I'm taking the lighting from this one and maybe some of the likeness from this one and, you know, some of the likeness from the screenshots, but most of it is, you know, creative license. So, you know, I'm kind of playing up that highlight in the eyes here, and here, kind of to make it, it's got like a fiery quality, which kind of, if I'm using art speak or artist speak, it really fits in with the nature of the character of Connor. He's a fiery spirit, and I'm showing that with his eyes. And so there's some of that. You know, I got his war paint on, and I'm doing everything in layers. For you Photoshop people, I'm not going crazy with layers because it's super easy to get confused and work on the wrong layer. It just gets overwhelming. So what I did here, these are all these layers over here. These are all the previous states that I saved separately to show you my progress. But in the end, I'm really working just with this, whatever's in this final folder. So I've got shoot. Almost. I usually curse like a sailor, so it's incredible that I haven't said anything to this point. So I've got my base copy, which is his body. It's got the outfit here, and everything else, the major things. I have the necklace on its own layer. I've got his bangs on a separate layer from his hair. I've got this little scar on its own layer, if you can see that. I've got the face paint on its own layer. And so that looks funny. But that's really it. These are just the major key elements for Connor. You know, I have the folder named Connor. This is just him. It has nothing to do with the background. I have a separate folder for background. So I mean, it can get a little bit heavy in terms of layers, but how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is just a copy of this one here that I made just in case I screwed something up awful. But it's really just 5 layers that I have here for Connor. And then for the background, I guess I just have 1. And I mean, I might be working in more layers as I go along. For example, you know, this background here. This background here. Get rid of Connor. Right? You see, I just put as much as I need. I didn't fill the entire thing out because it's not. You're not going to see it anyway. What was I talking about? Jesus. Okay, yeah, the flag here, the background flag. This was initially 2 different layers. You know, I had or maybe more. You know, I'll start off by doing the flag. That's 1 layer, and underneath I'll have a layer for the sky that I did, and then, you know, eventually when I started putting the stars on, these stars look awful without the rest of it. You know, I'll go in, I'll do the stars on their own layer, and then when I have everything the way I want it, I'll start to flatten it down and consolidate everything. And here's what I did in the end. I did a cool little Photoshop blur, Gaussian blur. And the reason I did that, for a little sense of realism, because in a photograph you would have depth of field, that's what it's called when you have certain elements in the distance blurred and other things in focus. And also what it does, when we have this finished result here, is it helps make Connor pop, makes him stand, you know, makes him come forward. Otherwise, without that, especially when you zoom out, it can kind of start to blend together or get overly complicated, where now it gives a little bit more pop from the foreground to the background. God, I need to sleep more. I am having a very difficult time remembering what I'm talking about. What else? More stuff, more art stuff. So that's basically just the fundamentals of how I go about making the decisions I make to make a painting. What else? I'm sorry. I feel like this was... I'm going to stop apologizing because that's probably annoying. This was really drawn out. I probably didn't answer most of your questions, but it's a jumping off point, and you got to know me a little bit, which I'm very happy to say has been an enjoyable experience for me, as I am broadcasting live to you from my mother's house. And, you know, it gives you a little bit of a glimpse into my workflow. At least, you know, there's no right way to do any of this stuff. Clearly, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are better than I am, but I'm trying to open up a line of communication, I guess, so that people who want to know how I do things, they can get an idea, and it gives them, like I said, a jumping off point for more specific questions. So, you know, if you have questions about, for example, the type of brushes that I use, which I probably should have mentioned, I really For the most part, I really only use the hard round brush, which comes standard with Photoshop. What else? I should mention. Let me open my Wacom settings here. I tweak my tablet. Where is it? My sensitivity on this. Get over here! Why is this not working? Oh, geez, everything's falling apart now. Please don't crash. Oh, God. Oh, God. Well, I'm gonna have to come back to that. Wait, no, there it is. Okay, so here is the Wacom tablet property menu. And you see, you can choose your settings for your grip pen or your stylus. So I have my tip feel set all the way one back from firm. And the reason I do that is I feel like it's easier to... Where's my canvas that I was working with? Please don't crash. Oh, God. Alright, so I'm gonna work on here, I guess. Oh, God, everything's crashing. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna stop recording, and I'm gonna come right back and finish this guy. So stay tuned. Are we back? We're back! We're back! Then we're back! Alright, let's load up Photoshop. By the way, I just realized that I've been recording myself on the webcam this entire time. So that's neat. So I guess all that... Oh, no, don't do that. I guess all the tangents I went on about you not being able to see my gestures was all for naught. So I'm glad I did them. And I'm glad you were able to bear witness to them. Oh my God, why is... Okay, Photoshop. Open. By the way, I should also mention, this is the second one of these, and we're back, recordings I've done. I did the conclusion about 10 minutes ago, and it got corrupted. So, well, first of all, you would think that I would be better at this by now, but I'm not. So let's hope that this one works. And yes, I know my performance is slow. So, let's go back to what we were talking about 15 minutes ago. Real time. Open. Let's open up a new canvas. So, I was talking about tip sensitivity of my Wacom pen. And the reason why I have it set one tab away from firm, I would open the dialog again to show you, but I'm terrified that if I do it, everything is going to crash again. So just, if you forget, scrub back in the video to see what the dialog looks like. But the reason I do that is it makes it easier to blend, and for me that's ideal because I do a lot of realistic paintings, and it's just nice having this eye contact now. I thought I was just talking to myself, but I'm glad that we can have this connection now. Anyway, yeah, so as a realistic painter, most of that stuff is, you know, careful blending and gradation. I mean, just look in the face. There's a lot of blending that goes on to get a realistic looking finish. So I choose this sensitivity because it allows, or if my computer was working, it would allow for a more natural blend without having to use the color picker all the time. The color picker, I don't remember if I mentioned this or if it's in the cutting room floor clip that got corrupted, but anyway, I'll say it again. The color picker, which is, the hotkey is Alt key on your keyboard. use that to sample any color on the canvas. So if I wanted to use this gray here, Alt, click on that guy, and now I'm painting in that color. Blam, doing it. Or black, etc. God, this computer is lagging like crazy. And the reason I'm doing that... You gotta be kidding me. Hello. I'm recording right now.
I'm so sorry.
That's alright.
I'm so sorry.
I don't think a more perfect thing could have just happened. That was my mother. And, benefits of being a starving artist who lives at home. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Sometimes life gives us these little treasures. We just have to accept them and say thank you. So, thank you, Mom. And, what was I talking about? Blending. So, if I want to do this gradation, I have a black here, I have a gray here, use this color picker to sample back and forth and kind of blend them out. And we're lagging again. I'm just gonna finish this video up and hope that the next one runs more smoothly. Maybe I'll see if my mom can make another cameo, because at least for me that was an enjoyable experience. So let's close this guy. Go back to the finished painting. I can't believe that happened. And wrap this up. So it seems like this was all done briefly, but it's been God knows how long, this whole recording. So I apologize for that. I figured if you made it this long, I owe you thanks. Probably should have gone over the fundamentals earlier, but whatever. Okay, so wrapping up. I have outlined some of the basic steps I take. For example, the first blocking in grayscale, getting the composition down, getting the general lights and darks values. Then I start blocking in some color. Then I start bringing in some... That's a big jump. Sorry about that. I didn't really think that I was going to be doing this recording as I did it. Anyway, start bringing in some other elements. The flag, sky. Ooh, my dad's calling. I have to call him back. Next step, more details. Bringing everything together with the same color scheme and lighting. An important thing to pay attention to. You want to work from... What the heck? Okay. You want to work from big to small. And what I mean by that is, in the first steps when I did the grayscale, you want to nail the composition, the values, all that stuff before you start worrying about details like crusty lip close-up, or scars or eyelashes that no one will ever see, ever. Eyebrow hairs. Point is, nail the big stuff before you go in for the details. Whoa. Otherwise, I mean, you can have the most detailed painting in the world, but if the composition, if the basics, the fundamentals are off, stop it, Dad, then the whole thing's going to suffer. Let's wrap this up. Let me finish by saying thank you to whoever has sat through, who has ever sat through this entire video. Appreciate it. This is about feedback. So please leave comments or questions, anything you have, leave it in the comment section. When this whole thing is done, I'll put buttons. If I can figure out how to do that, I'll do a subscribe button in this general vicinity, and I'll put all my information, my Twitter, my email, whatever other social media things that I have, I'll put those there. So if you guys want to get in touch with me directly, you can do that, or just, like I said, leave comments on YouTube. And if there is a desire for another one of these types of videos, I will do that. And if there is a desire for just the video of my mom, I will pass that on to her, and we can do that. So thank you guys for your time. Hope this was at least a little bit helpful. And that's about it. Take care.